Hey, what's up? PizzaLovingNerd here. Back in 2009, Palm released the Palm Pre, and this was different from their previous phones and PDAs because this ran a new Linux-based operating system called webOS instead of Palm OS. When webOS came out, it was definitely one of the best OSes for mobile, even beating out iOS and Android. It was Linux-based, it was smooth even on bad hardware, and it was very ahead of its time in terms of the way you navigated it, especially with its multitasking interface, which was card-based, something that wouldn't come to iOS or Android until iOS 7. Overall, pretty good operating system. But webOS failed not because of the operating system itself, but mostly because of the hardware that it ran on. See, a lot of the hardware it ran on was cheap, plastically, and poorly spec'd. So, for most people, something like an iPhone or an Android phone was just a better value. Eventually, HP bought Palm and took over webOS. They made a few more phones that ran webOS, but unfortunately, in January 12, 2012, HP released what would be the last version of webOS. In 2013, LG acquired webOS and started using it on their IoT devices such as smart TVs, and the HP app catalog was officially shut down on March 15, 2015. Basically made it not usable to daily driving. By the way, if you want a full video on the history of webOS, comment down below. Luckily, before they shut down the HP app catalog, they open-sourced webOS for their devices, and a small community grew around it. Eventually, a project called webOS Ports started LuneOS, with the goal of porting webOS to other devices. But regular webOS has basically been abandoned at this point, and LuneOS is what's left of it. In 2019, webOS got a port to the good old PinePhone. Let's start with the UI. It runs a UI called Luna, which is written in Qt and QML. Considering that this UI was developed in 2009, it is incredibly modern. The design is skeuomorphic like iOS 6, but it also doesn't feel dated like iOS 6. To launch apps, you click on that arrow thing on the bottom left, which will bring up your app drawer, or you just start typing in the search box. On the top, you have a global menu for your applications plus your time, and on the top right, a little quick settings menu. On the bottom, we have our home button, which is a pill shape. This allows you to access the home screen by tapping on it, as well as navigating back by swiping left on it, and taking a screenshot by swiping right on it. Why a screenshot? The only thing I don't like about this design is I kind of wish that the little navigation pill was a circle or something, because I'm used to a pill on Android, and on Android 10, the pill for gesture navigation means you swipe up. So I kept getting confused and I kept trying to swipe up when you're supposed to tap. So in my opinion, it might make it a little bit more clear to people who are used to Android if you change the navigation pill to a circle, or just make a swipe up gesture to go home instead of, a tap. The UI reminds me a lot of the brand new GNOME 40, like a lot. And Michael Tunnell from Destination Linux even made a full video about this, and he is definitely right. Although keep in mind, LuneOS did not rip off GNOME, because webOS came out a long time even before GNOME 3 came out. With the exception of the phone dialer app, the browser, and the UI, all of the pre-installed apps on it are written with a library called Enyo. This is a JavaScript framework that allows you to create apps with web technologies, not unlike how Firefox OS apps were developed. All of its applications are consistently designed with a describe that I describe as a mix between iOS 6 and GNOME, and it ships with a package manager called Freeware, and it's not my favorite package manager. If GNOME Software and KDE Discover were kind of like the iOS App Store or the Google Play Store, Freeware would be like Cydia. It's supposed to be more of a general package manager for people who know what they're doing, instead of an app store. Like, to be honest, it feels like a direct clone of Cydia, and it's okay, but you kind of have to already know what you're going to want to install. It's not the best for trying to discover new apps, and considering how clunky Cydia is, and since it basically ripped off Cydia's design, it's pretty clunky. Another issue of freeware is, for some reason, every single app that I tried to install on it failed to install, and this is not a PinePhone specific issue, as this also happened on my Nexus 5. Because of this, I could not install any third-party apps onto LuneOS. Big sad. The web browsing experience on it is meh. I believe that this browser was designed for something like the HP touchpad, which was the first thing that LuneOS supported, and I think this because the URL bar is very small, and you can't really see what website you're on based on the URL. Sometimes the browser also zooms out all of the websites, kind of like you're on a tablet. This should be easy to fix just by moving the navigation controls to the bottom, kind of like what Safari does, and fixing the issue of website rendering. Other than that, the browser is actually one of the quicker browsers I've tried on the PinePhone. But some websites have issues. For example, Twitter says the browser isn't supported, which is weird because I tried the same website on my Nexus 5 and it was supported. And to make it even weirder, the browser is based on Qt Web Engine 5.12.2, which is not that old. It's based on Chromium 83, which should be new enough to support Twitter. For whatever reason, some of the websites that do work have some issues with fonts, so they would look kind of weird. Keep in mind that none of these issues are present on Android devices that have gotten a LuneOS port like the Nexus 5. So I'm not really sure what is causing this PinePhone specific issue, but it is there. The web browser experience has a lot going for it, but it needs a GUI redesign and some fixes to websites to make websites like Twitter actually work. Unfortunately, this is still stuck on kernel 5.8, while newer OSes like Mobian, Postmarket OS, Arch, and Manjaro have newer kernels with more features. Because of this, you're going to be missing out on things like more stable charging and external displays, which are pretty minor, but you're also going to be missing out on the patch that adds 60 Hz refresh rate, which makes the OS a lot less smooth. And to make it worse, LuneOS on the PinePhone does not support the camera yet. Most OSes have the camera working now with something like Megapixels, or Ubuntu Touch ships its own camera app. However, LuneOS cannot take photos yet on the PinePhone, so that's kind of unfortunate. I mean, to be fair, Megapixels is a GTK app, and I don't think LuneOS was designed with GTK apps in mind, but that is still unfortunate. So, this OS definitely has a lot of potential, but it could be better with some fixes to the web browser, fixed apps, and a newer kernel. Overall though, it is another one for you to check out. It's one of the OSes that is furthest away from being daily driver. It does still need a lot of work. However, it is still interesting, the UI is very good, and it has some historical significance behind it with webOS. So, that's the video. Thanks for watching. Thanks to patrons, Mario Scriptsguard, Pete Nostre, Jim Peter, Sam Covett, and Mitchell Vantino. I have a lot of hardware coming out next month, so the support really helps. See ya!